Fast. Hello, I believe we're on the air. I'm just going to re-add the participants, Sheri and Bob.
Well, it would help if I unmuted. Okay, so I believe I've got a hold of Bob, and BTR has reconnected its server.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Oh. Is it a full moon or what?
Well, Mercury went into retrograde, and I don't know, I think the moon is still up there. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm trying to bring Julien in here just now. So, hi, everybody. Welcome to the transitioning, and it is happening. We're just having our per usual technical roundabouts. How are you, Bob?
I'm doing great. You're excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
You're fortunate that like I even noticed the time, because we were sitting here. We were having dinner. We got started kind of late, and Heather was here, and she was talking, and we were just sitting here listening. She was talking about, all what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I was like, "Oh my God, what time is it?" And I realized it was like 10 minutes before the show started, and I was like, "Oh my God!" So I quick jumped on onto Skype. And Blog Talk wouldn't let me in.
Oh my goodness. It's that little intuitive twinge that goes, I think you have a show. We should probably get moving. So, yeah, it sounds like just from Facebook and all the blogs and everything that the past couple of days and today even has been a lot of going and doing. Is there any updates that you can kind of give anybody from your perspective?
Oh God, there's a lot that's really going on, and I don't know if anybody's gotten a chance to look at Brian Kelly's most recent post, but he posted something that was sent to him. Well, apparently, after the original filings were made in March, I think, of 2012, on the same day, the Bank of International Settlements filed a UCC filing granting themselves access to Eternal Essence. But Eternal Essence is marked as the grantor. In other words, the Eternal Essence owns the Bank of International Settlements. So it was kind of a major validation that the filings were real and that the Bank of International Settlements did recognize them and tried to covert them.
Oh my goodness.
But of course, it had no effect because they cannot covert Eternal Essence. It's part of the filings.
Wow. Okay, so they've just tried to recoup and redo the whole thing and tried to undermine it, even though the underwriting was completely perfect.
Right, and so that was quite a major validation into a lot of what was going on, and it also shows that the banking system runs on an energetic system, and that they recognize Eternal Essence as the currency.
Wow. Okay. The only thing I could say is wow. Okay, so if they were going to say that the UCC filings weren't valid in the first place, then why in the world would they try to use them if they don't see them as valid?
Well, I would try to backtrack. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. And Heather was just explaining how every embodiment is an original depository. You are an original depository of eternal essence. So it is that eternal essence is deposited within you, and as the original depositor, right? You can create any representation of value that you want, and it is instantly recognized universally.
Okay, I'm gonna work with Julien for about 2 seconds if you can go, so I can bring him into the call.
Okay. But she was just going on and explaining how that, you know, and why the banking system really hasn't been able to get anything going. They haven't been able to do the revaluation like they wanted to, because every time that they try to, those UCC filings will just come up and they can't do anything. They can't access any value, and so they've just been kind of shuffling whatever assets that they can back and forth, and the game has really become quite transparent now. And these filings, this finding of what they've been doing is just more exposure to what's actually happening. People are beginning to see behind the veil, and to see what was really going on behind the scenes. And you're going to find that it's all about the energetics. It's all about energy.
Right. Which is how we saw it to beginning. Oh yeah, there he is. Cool.
Did you hear me?
Julien, I can hear you. Bob, can you hear Julien?
I can hear a whisper. You're like coming from the Twilight Zone, from the Nether World or something, Julien. Sound like an EVP.
Oh my goodness. I can hear you fine.
Really?
Okay.
I hear like a transformer buzz.
All right, Julien, if you hang up, I will try to bring you in individually. We'll try that. Okay. So, Bob, can you still hear me?
Or maybe. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Nope. Yep, I can hear you. Okay. So, and we've seen the filings and what they've done so far, and everything that they've done so far has kind of turned everybody's worlds upside down. And so I think now is when they're really. I mean, obviously they've tried to do, you know, whatever they can to kind of ignore it or usurp it or whatever it is, and I think that's probably maybe the most transparent, blatant one we've seen yet.
Yeah. It's you know, it's not only just validation, but it's a major turning point, you know, in this whole transitioning, because there's really nothing that was unseen that's not visible now.
Mhm.
And you know, this is you know, the emperor has no clothes. This is the last scene of that scenario.
Right.
And you know, this is it's perfect. It's very, very timely, because just as we are working things out energetically, it instantly has an effect in the physical world and what comes up. It's just all I can say is each and every one of us has more of an effect on reality with your thoughts than you ever realized. And when you really start to tune in, and you'll see the effect of your will and your word. It really, I don't know, it's paradigm changing. It really flips your whole consciousness around, because you can no longer look at yourself as being small and limited anymore. And you understand that you literally can move the universe with a thought. And that instantly kind of, at least for me, it instantly invokes a type of a sense of responsibility, but it so many things come along with it. That realization, because it's also, am I still here?
You're still there?
Or am I talking? Okay, that was Julien. I heard disconnect.
Okay.
It's also a remembering.
I'm back on, but I dialed myself in and unmuted myself. There's a weird back way to do it. But. There we go.
It's a remembering, almost like a reconnection with something that was always there. A recognition of something that was always there. And you get this sense of limitlessness and empowerment, and there's no more fear. It just doesn't process anymore. It just, because you see the whole overview and you see the big picture, you understand that there's never anything out of order. And, everybody has the same basic consciousness. We're all sharing one consciousness, so there's no need to fear the other. There is no need to fear the other. You are the other, and your natural state is peace and love. It's just, when you hit it and you feel it and you experience it, it becomes like, oh, what was I doing at the time? And
Bob, we lost that last part. We heard it becomes. You're a robot.
I reach a point where it's kind of. Well, that's the whole point. I wish I could give you a punchline, like, some sort of sentence or some sort of saying that encapsulates the whole experience of eternal essence. And understanding, like comprehending, and like, wow. I guess that's all I can say is it's just wow. Wow.
Yeah,
everything has new meaning. Like, you find meaning in everything.
Oh, yes. I was doing a little bit of research because I just recently have gotten into Dr. Bruce Lipton's work and how he's scientifically and from a biological standpoint showing how our perspective creates our reality and creates, changes in our bodies. And I was taking it into the step of psychology because, everything in psychology we call a disorder. And I was thinking, in true and absolute eternal essence, absolute unlimitedness, absolute freedom, the idea of having disorder is kind of silly. And I'm looking at this whole field going, disorder, that doesn't even fit in freedom of the mind, body, and spirit, because everything is always in order. So to be able to even say a psychological disorder is just another reflection of, putting things in boxes. And if we flip it around, which I always talk about flipping around the perspective, if you flip that around, then we can start to see exactly how powerful our perspectives and minds and bodies and spirits really are.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. When I was looking at what was going on today with the filings and seeing eternal essence on the Washington D.C. land property website, I'm just going, wow. So you're right. Wow is like the only word I can get to it right now.
Yeah, it's oh gosh, so perfect, and it's so perfectly timed.
Yeah, this may be a good opportunity for Julien, if you can give us some big picture perspective from your end as well.
Well, I was meditating last night, and I began to talk with Crystal a little bit from my higher being's perspective, almost completely from my higher being's perspective. And I remember most of it, and there's some pretty big, broad, very simple terminology that we were going through. And in order to meditate, I was taking deep breaths. And that was calming my mind and my state. It's how I like to access my higher being in a very deep way. I tend to get very, very, very quiet, except for the sound of my deep breaths. And I do that maybe 10 times or so. And I got to sharing how I was perceiving again the universe and everything. And it had a lot to do with the expression of the breath. The breath is taking in, you breathe in, you acquire oxygen, you are expanding the lungs, you're expanding your perspective, your energy, and then there's breathing out, which is expression of choice, expression of condensation, expression of coalescing the projection in a very particular way. It's like breathing in, I was interpreting as this is about how to expand beyond where you are, and breathing out is a grounding into the current moment, into what you focus on, into the projection. And between the polarity of the two, it's constantly occurring. When anyone has questions, they are expanding or attempting to expand their perspective by expanding into the unknown with what they wish to discover. And when they make a conclusion, which is the opposite of having a question, then they're grounding a perspective. They're grounding a belief or an understanding. So there's constantly this balancing of coalescing and grounding and expanding beyond it. Two different actions, energy and motion going one way or the other. What this turned into in the conversation was basically the understanding that you're doing one of the two things at any point. You're either coalescing a belief or you are expanding beyond it. And there is virtually no in between. You're either breathing in or you're breathing out. And that is shown in the patterns of the universe, in the patterns of frequency, as you know, with the oscillation of the vibration, and of frequency of light, frequency of sound. You can see that. You even see it digitally. You're either ascending or you're descending on the wavelength. And so that range is a range of in the discussion of the breath, you can only breathe in so much, and you can only breathe out so much. And that is what I interpreted as the human range. So you'll know when you want to breathe in more than your lungs are able to hold, then what you'll do is you'll keep practicing, and you'll build the strength of your lungs to be able to expand more. But in general, all that needs to be really observed is the expansion or the coalescing. Now, what we're really looking at in life is the balance between those two. You cannot have one without the other if you want to remain human. And that's also reflected in the fact that you can't just keep breathing in more than you're breathing out more than you're breathing in. It has to be a balance. And that balance is what is called peace. That peace is where you have this eternal happiness within you that everything is perfect. So although we ask questions, we also get to a point where we'd like to make some conclusions based on what we've discovered. At the same time, we let go of what we've discovered in favor of expanding beyond them and asking questions. This is the process that we're doing when we are expanding our minds. We're not expanding so much that we're not coming to conclusions, as you see. There's this balance. And so we're constantly faced with that element of life. And as we are human, and as we are into the definition of human, the balance is what we're constantly seeking. Everything is in order. As you said before, everything has its purpose in the exchange of the balance. Now, I'm not talking about polarity. Polarity can be explained within this process of expansion and contraction. But polarity is simply a perspective-based understanding approach to life. Now, the other element that we talked about was that what is the purpose of happiness? Happiness is that culmination of balance. Happiness is reflected in the body. It is given signals to the body to release those parts that make you smile, that make you giggle, that make you laugh, that make you happy, that make tears run. That balance is that energy that is in full purpose. Energy always is in flow, and it always wants to serve greatest purpose. Energy's greatest purpose is to be in balance, is to fulfill the equation, is to reflect on how both polarities are one. And the only time that both polarities are one is when they are equal. And when they're equal, you can work with something that is in balance. The whole human body is in balance. We don't have cells fighting each other. Only when we are at an imbalance do the cells fight each other, and things like cancer and illness. The body is in balance, so it can make up a greater organism. When our minds are at balance, when subjects of thought are in balance, we can be part of a greater organization of thought, which we call our higher being, our higher selves, and the higher experience. So if you want to work on a larger scale, you will seek things like balance, which is coming from understanding and reflecting on conclusions. There is no end point to this process. You can always be part of a greater whole by being in balance and serving the bigger picture. You can be more deliberate about that, and you can be less deliberate about that. There is no right or wrong there either. The only concern that your average human being probably has to reflect upon is being in balance, not taking on polarities past the point of comfort. And although we have plenty of discomfort, they're there for us to reflect on what we can bring when we bring the polarity into balance. So if something really bothers us, then we can bring light to that and bring it into balance. If someone is hurt and they are requiring assistance, us coming and offering assistance can bring balance to that. And now, because that balance has occurred between the person that's hurt and the person that's supporting, now you have an organism or an experience that is more balanced and centered, so that a greater experience can now come of that. Now you can see that those two have a greater empathy bond between each other, and they are closer now, and so they can operate at a broader experience.
This is what I would call what you're talking about, Julien. This is the where heaven meets earth, the coming together. Because in the polarity, in the whole polarity experience, we externalize so much of ourselves. You know, we always believed in a higher or greater portion of ourselves, or a higher, a higher sense of being. Whether we called it God, whether we called it spirit, or whatever. And that existed in another realm, in a different place, in a place that was separate from where we were, and the whole, or if you're whole looking at it from a galactic perspective, greater intelligence that exists beyond our realms or beyond our reach, outer space. Okay? Well, as we start to marry our own consciousness and recognize that greater portion of ourselves as ourselves, those worlds come together. And this is, what the whole anticipation of the first contact, where that higher intelligence actually comes into our conscious reality, and they're walking on the earth and being with us as equals, as one of us, or we are becoming part of that galactic collective, or that higher consciousness that beforehand we had externalized. It's now coming together. This is the marriage of heaven on earth, and that balance point that you talk about, where those polarities are in perfect balance. You hit that 0 point where all exists in harmony.
Yeah, and we're always at some point. It's not somewhere in the future. We're in balance right now with whatever we're experiencing. It can't be any other way. We're magnetic, and our experience is the response. Who we are inside is what we're receiving outside. For instance, going back to the discussion of the galactics and extraterrestrials, we've all had and heard the stories of extraterrestrials that weren't very friendly, that were doing things that we weren't really happy to hear about. And that was who we were at that time. We were not that resonant with ourselves. And so we attracted those types of beings and those types of experiences that were not resonant. They just persisted. They were magnetically allowed per who we were at that time. And so many of the galactics that we wish to see, and I'm told this directly, is when we are in balance with them, they will, with no doubt, be here. They will be here when we share a sort of understanding with them. It's not that we're going to get their help to get there. They're doing as much help as we're able to ask. But it will literally be a scenario of we will achieve what they have achieved, and then we'll be partners.
Oops, I was muted. I was just saying that's perfect.
If there's technology we're looking from them, we'll develop it first. So things like that.
And when you bring that into consciousness, when you really start to comprehend that it's all you. It's all, we are all one thing. Together, we are all one thing. And that's it's easy to say that statement, but the external and the internal are always in harmony.
Yep. There's
They're
no such
always
thing as anything else.
Exactly. And that's when I don't know, like you just, for me, I instantly, like, there was no more fear anymore, because there was an understanding of how to go and do, to be and do exactly as you wish, without any resistance to the process. You know?
So now we can all shake hands, say good game, give each other a pat on the butt, and get on with it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And so I think
exactly.
a lot of things that we're doing is we're developing greater unity, organized experiences. We are coming together. We are talking. We are fleshing out the old beliefs. We are sharing experiences. We are making decisions together, knowing that it is possible and that the impossible is simply something yet to be perceived that is possible yet. And so we're working together. We are taking more time to take our external relationships and internal relationships to the next level. We're removing belief structures that are holding us to a reality that we're not interested in anymore, and we're reflecting that to our outer experience, and people are responding to that all around us. You'll know that that's the case. You attract onto you the balance and summation of who you are, and it's not that it will show up simply because you made the conclusion now. They are already here, and that they will continue to be, in the moment, the balance. Although I like to talk about momentum, as in something's in momentum and it's about to occur, really, that's more a description of a choice that has been made and it is not fully believed yet. It's literally like it becomes physically true in your experience once you finally believe it or allow it to be true. So when you realize you're at the center of your belief structure, then you only need to observe within yourself what your belief structure is made of and what conclusions you want to put together to establish new beliefs that you're in agreement with and that you desire. And then you'll literally find that reality come to fruition at the very moment that completed your conclusion. Now, there's lots of things that we might call, it's called magic, right? Magic is something that's very peculiar to one group and not to the, peculiar to the observer but not to the practitioner. And the reason why it's destined to return as a practice is because everybody will have their own conclusions, they'll have their own beliefs, and they will work with energy in exactly the way that suits them. And those that see other people being able to do things that are remarkable will also find a way to accept that. And everybody will have their own personal, truths that they're living, and that will happen when everyone is able to respect each other for being different and for having different developed skills.
Well, that's exactly what we're doing here. I mean, we set an intention. We want to create a place where people can be and do as they choose in harmony with what is. And we just followed we didn't understand how. We didn't really care about that part of the equation. We just recognized that we were going to do it, and so we're doing it. And it's just becoming. It's unfolding in, like you said, in a magical way. Things are just happening. It's just happening. And it's funny because it really it's done without all that other effort that I used to put into what I thought was necessary to create. It's done without a lot of worrying and planning and a lot of paperwork, and it's done really just with your imagination and your your willingness to trust that imagination, faith enough to move into action as though it was already there. And it just,
well,
I'm recalling as I'm speaking, all the different times I've read similar expressions, the law of attraction, but until you actually move out of that whole sense of fear, you can't really comprehend what those words mean in a practical sense, because it wouldn't seem practical for you not to worry about what you see impending in your external world. It would not seem logical to you not to be afraid in those instances. It would not be intuitive for you to move into that place of peace. But once you experience the correlation between the exterior and the interior, then all of a sudden what was once impractical, illogical, becomes the only thing that makes sense.
It's that, I guess, balancing. It's that point where you're in a place where it is correct. It is in balance. That's that 0 point where you understand all of something, all of a subject, all of a circumstance, all of an emotion, because then you have something you can work with. Then you have basically the conclusion of all of that individual experience, aspect, or feeling, and then you have something to work with, right? There's no mystery of what it is, and so it is a functional building block that you can work with going forward, like a conclusion. It's as if all things are already fully developed and there is no puzzles. There is no question that can't be answered. All we're doing is we're journeying along the timelines of discovering this, so that we can actually find ourselves in those spaces where we have learned something, that we've come to those conclusions, that we have the bigger picture. And it's occurring on infinite number of subjects, not just even the subject of our being one and all at the same time. It's on many smaller things too. Like I don't know quantum physics or whatever, but if I want to go learn how to become a quantum physician, I can do that. So I'll ask the questions, and I'll discover the conclusions, and I'll bring myself to that understanding more and more, so that I have access to those grounding principles to make use of that, and I can go and teach that or use it or whatever. The sorts of things that, are unknown, that's just the realm to explore. Nothing has to be known. That's the other thing. Nothing has to be known. All that is really what we're looking for is that balance within ourselves, because the point at which we are experiencing what we consider negativity, that's that kind of like detachment from the balance of who we are inside. Our higher being knows who we are, and so it gives us messages as to if we're on the path following who we are or not. And that can come in the emotional spectrum. That can come in the gut emotional spectrum. And so if we want to be in balance with who more that we are, and we discover who we are, and we get to perceive and experience and try out things until we get to that place where we know exactly what we are comfortable with. And that comfort level is that peace equilibrium point. And it's not just peace as in like, I won't ever have to think about this again. It's the kind of peace where it's just so perfect it can bring tears to your eyes. And at that place, you know that you have this essence of abundance, and that, you know, there is no momentum that can shake whatever it is that you're in perspective of yourself. So, you know, we're constantly expanding and coalescing, and I really am enjoying this process myself. I'm really seeing how it's working more and more, and I really appreciate finding others that are along this path that I can have this discussion with.
I was just going to say, you know what? There's probably someone, you know, that has not been exposed to any of this that might tune in and like be like, what the fuck are these people talking about?
there is actually someone brand new in the chat room, so hello there. You know, and I've seen it just, you know, we want to talk about something as a simple example. I've seen it just in the conversations and the people that I'm talking to now. You know, several months ago, before I went on tour, one of my biggest things was like, I want more people to talk to. There's just, you know, there's nobody around here that I can talk to about this stuff, and every time I try to talk about it, I just get really weird looks, and just nobody can really kind of feed back with me. And even after the tour, you know, on the way back to the States a couple weeks ago, everybody, like, I talked to several people. I went through 6 airports and talked to several people. There was a woman, you know, we were there at the airport at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and she was talking to one of the attendants, and so she offered him coffee, and he said no, and I kind of smiled because I was admiring her, you know, her just being so nice and kind to him. And she looked at me and she goes, "Do you want to get coffee?" And I'm like, "Well, heck yeah, I'll go get coffee with you." And we sat for 20 or 30 minutes chatting it up about everything that I was up to and what she was up to. And then within a few minutes we were talking about energies and empathy and being empathic and everything that she was doing. And then at the next airport, I overheard a guy playing something. He was playing a video on his phone, and it had that really good song, One Day. And so I ran over. Yeah, it's a great song. And so I went over to him. I was like, I love that song. He was like, "Oh, yeah, I was just watching a video about people helping each other." And so we started talking, and come to find out he works at a pretty big university. I think it might have been in Michigan. And he works with the agriculture department. And there are students there who are testing seeds and plants for GMOs, and they won't sell the seeds unless they're GMO free. And it kept going and kept going and kept going to the point now that the hefty majority of the people that I talk to are on the same wavelength and are easily talking about the same stuff. And a good portion of the time, they're the ones bringing it up and opening the door to these kinds of subjects. So a few months ago here I was going, I just want somebody to talk to, and now it's everybody I talk to.
And that's exactly how it works. I mean, your interior world is reflecting what's going on outside. I mean, your exterior world's reflecting what's going on inside. Or no matter how you choose to look at it.
It all circulates.
You know? It's all the same.
This journey we're on is constantly an exploration of ourselves. We wouldn't be exploring anything if there wasn't an outside ourselves, it seems, because lots of things on the outside gives us focus. But at the same time, you can do that entire journey within yourself. Most people like to do it on the outside, however, and that's fine too. Discovering the world, discovering people, discovering all these things. They're a mirror to what's inside. You can access all of it inside, but the outside, many people do prefer that, and that's okay. The only thing is not to judge the outside, because you're judging your inside too. And so if you can let it be and simply be an observership and acceptance and you'll actually enjoy your outside world much more, and that will reflect how you have more of a pleasant approach to life from the inside and what other people observe. I've also noticed that when we make a judgment of things outside, that's something that is within us that we're not comfortable with. We don't immediately observe it that way because of the space between the outside and the inside. But it's kind of like a theme of life that we discover at our own pace, and we chew things in bite-sized amounts. And you can say that the outside world has lots of bite-sized experiences, and that whenever we take the time to go inside on something serious or something we consider major or important, when we find it inside, it is a very large biteful when it comes down to what we observe and what it takes to sort of shift our awareness to a more balanced understanding or balanced state of comfort. And so I think there's just constantly, this is occurring more and more. We're meeting lots of other people because they're like us, they are us. We are meeting those people who we are in balance with. We're seeing these people we're in balance with. Synchronicity is everything. Everything is synchronistic. Just like Bob was saying earlier in the show, everything is purpose. Everything is you. Now, you're not seeing the whole world from your five senses all at once. You're seeing a very specific example of yourself, where you stand. And it's also a good way to observe the journey of your soul and the journey of your higher being through the cosmos. Is you're traveling in 3 dimensions here, and you see the ground you walk on, which is the grounding, and the air that you breathe, which is the energy, and the light that allows you to see everything. That is the frequency right before manifestation. Everything is light before it becomes manifest physically. All these are essentially indicators of your inner path. And your inner path and who you are is much like a star traveling through the cosmos and just visiting whatever strikes fancy of what it wants to discover and experience. Now, since it is already all observed and already all exists, what is there to explore that no one has explored before? Well, there isn't anything that isn't already explored, that doesn't already exist. There is nothing new. There's only bringing experiences together and sort of comboing them into something that we enjoy matching and pairing. It's like putting a puzzle together. It's in pieces, but once you've completed a puzzle that has like 1,000 pieces, you find out that completed 1,000-piece puzzle is actually is this one piece of a larger 1,000-piece puzzle. And so it goes. And so the fractal nature continues. And you'd say, well, what's the point? If everything is just going to keep going anyways, why bother doing anything? Why not just rest here? Well, we enjoy the exploration of the energy in transition. The energy and the consciousness wants to be in motion, which means we want to travel. We don't often want to stay put. Now, there are people who do want to stay put, and they live in a cave on a mountain, but at this period of time, we are going through our expansion phase, and that's why we're here, because us here at this time, this galactic date, is because we want to expand. If we wanted to contract, be still, and not be in a state of heightened discovery, we would not be here at this time. We'd be choosing a time that is much more still and much more contemplative of the all that we've created. That will occur again in the future, and you can incarnate to that time when you're ready.
Isn't today supposed to be the day of Ragnarok, according to the Norse
I don't know
people?
what that is.
Yeah, can you explain that?
I think that, the Ragnarok is the Norse equivalent of Armageddon, the end of the world. And being that I'm in the future right now, as far as you guys are concerned, it's
all good.
It's almost midnight, and I'm just letting you know, Ragnarok hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened. Well,
you know, it's in a lot of the things that we imagine, you know, that and even death. You understand it. It's just an imagination. It's just an idea. It's a concept. You know, that there could be non-existence in existence, and there really can't be. You know, but you can create the illusion of it, and we do this all the time. We do this all the time, and understanding that, you know, like, I mean, we just had a friend who became a close friend, you know, of all of us here. Our landlady, who just passed last week or a week and a half ago. She was found in her apartment. But over, you know, I mean, there wasn't really any grieving that we went through. You know, I mean, there were tears that were shed, but it was more of an understanding and recognition of her passing. But there was really, you know, all of these experiences are really relative to your perception of what's really going on. You know, and a lot of people, you know, would think that you should feel a certain way about certain things or certain experiences, and really, it's your perception of what's going on that's going to determine how you experience what's going on. But in of itself, what's going on is just what's going on. It's just things that are happening, and you don't really need to focus on any particular happening other than the ones that make you happy, and that will become your experience. It's just it's quite simple, honestly. I mean, it's a very, very simple.
A simple process. Nope. Did we lose Bob?
Maybe for just a moment.
Okay. We'll let that clear up for just a little bit, but there we go. We lost you just for a second there, Bob. You know, it's the same kind of thing with a lot of my conversations with the people that I was close to, you know, just a few months ago, because my perception has and it's continually changed over the past few years, but exponentially so over the past probably 6 months. And there have been times when somebody is just kind of unloading on me, and from their perception, you know, maybe I was too okay, or too, you know, like they were expecting me to have a different reaction or more of a reaction than I did. And I just, when you get to that point where you know that everything is in balance and you see the information coming to you for what it is, then I can, you know, I just kind of look at those people and go, you know, I totally respect and understand your perspective, and you've just given me confirmation that I'm going in the right direction. So thank you for that, and I'm going to go now. And I'm going to go do this of where I am resonating. So there's a much more respectful understanding. You know, somebody was asking me the other day, well, well, because of the UCC filings, why are you even bothering with a divorce? Well, let's back up just for just a second, because I'm also respecting the perspective of my ex-husband. And we're doing it in a way that is very loving and supportive of each other, so no, it probably doesn't look like what most people would expect out of two people ending the title of a relationship, but what's actually happening is we're transforming the relationship into something totally different, but we're doing it in a way that is with respect and love and support. So yeah, that's probably very surprising to a lot of people, but it's just an example that once you get into the perspective of you are moving in the right directions, then the comfort level comes in naturally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, well, I'm going through the same process myself, my own divorce process. And from the other person's point of view, I know that
okay.
They're seeing,
I got
this is, what's that? What was that, Sheri? Oh, no, I think I'm dropping from this section. Okay, Bob or Sheri, let me know if you can hear anything, or chat room, let me know if you can hear me. And I can't hear anybody, actually. Oh, it's like as if Bob is talking over me. Okay. I just became unmuted. Can everybody hear me from the chat room? I'm just checking again. Okay. So I'm going to assume that I'm the only one on the air right now. I'll continue my line of thought.
Hey, Bob, hang on just 1 second. We're having some weird issues with Julien here, so I'm going to unmute his mic one more time. And Julien, say something and see if we can hear you.
I'm saying something. I can hear you now.
Okay, Bob, can you hear him? Okay, Julien, hang on and just let Bob finish his sentence there, and we'll see what's going on with your mic.
Well, people are saying in the chat room they can't hear Bob at all. Yeah, I'm thinking it's just you and me, Sheri, right now. Oh, yeah, we can hear him talking, but it's like super, super faint and far away. So we can just detect the fact that there's a signal with him, but not what he's saying.
Okay, Bob, apparently you sound like a bee, and you sound like you're really far away to everybody in the chat room. But you're coming in completely clear for me.
That's weird.
Okay. That's right. Okay. So,
all right, let us know what he said.
Okay, so Bob just said, see, it's all about perception. So apparently I am now currently the middleman between Julien and Bob and holding BTR. All right. Well, I'm hosting in. Julien, is there any way that you can try Skype again?
Well, yeah. I'll stay on here first, though.
Okay.
The only thing I know is to call our group, right? Because what I really need is for me to be removed from the group and then added again by you, and then that would allow me to call the group.
Okay. So.
And I have it doesn't help that I actually have 2 groups here of you 3.
I know, I have at least
the,
a couple groups on there too. Okay.
I'm not even sure which one it is.
Yep. Yeah, I can hear Julien just fine, and I can hear you just fine. So what I have, I'll talk this out. What I have is Bob Wright and BTR host over Skype, and I have Julien called in from a phone with his mic unmuted, and I can hear you both. But the chat room says that, Bob, you sound like a bee and that you're really far away. So, I'm not sure which move to make.
I will hang up and call again, see if that does anything.
Okay. Julien's going to hang up and then call again.
Yeah. Be right back.
Very interesting little BTR stuff. See, it's not the end of the world. It's not the weirdness things going on. It's just BTR being its own its own game. As always. All right. Of course. Okay. So what if I hang up this call and then...
Alright, I'm back. And I still can't hear Bob.
Okay. Julien, can you hear Bob?
Nope.
Okay. But Bob, you said you can hear Julien? No. Okay. So then, what do you think, Bob? I feel like I'm at the eye of the needle, and I've got both of you on each end, and I'm trying to figure out how to get us into 0 point. Let's see. I think they could.
Well, the difference is that the audience can't hear Bob, but they can hear me. I'm thinking Bob is the one with the faulty line right now.
So the audience can hear
Bob and try to connect. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So
Bob,
Bob, I'm going to hang up with you and then call you back in. Okay. We'll do this.
Yeah, I think that's what we should do.
All right. So we do that, and then we bring in Julien. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So we've got this one still going, and then we're going to add people. I'm going to find Bob. Yes. Add. Call him back. All right. Thanks, Colleen. You were doing awesome. So Colleen says that she can hear both Julien and I. Good. And so which one now has Bob in here? What's really strange is that my Skype doesn't really tell me which call is active.
Oh.
It just tells me that I know we have BTR here, and I know you're in there.
Yeah.
So let's try to get Bob off of this one. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. So I still have BTR this way, because what I don't want to do is hang up BTR completely.
Right.
Okay. So now let's add is so strange. Because it doesn't actually have an active call.
And so Bob can't call in because it'd be a long distance, right?
Not necessarily. Let's see if we can just get Bob to
telephone in.
See, can you call the guest line? Skype is being Skypey. Whitney did a Skype test with me earlier. She's over in Morocco as well, and so she sent me a test. And she said, well, I'm just testing Skyper. And so I Skyped back, or I messaged her back, Skypey, Skyperton, because that is about the best functional test that I could possibly do with Skype at this time. I've just about had enough of my fill of Skype.
Yeah. So Skype has become an explicative.
It has. It just has.
I'm going to use it in regular, everyday conversation. Yeah, we had something going on here, and then all of a sudden you just Skyped out on me, man. I just don't know what happened.
You are such a Skype.
You're such a Skype.
You are being so Skype right now. Like, if it wasn't for you being so Skypey, we could have an awesome time.
Yeah.
All right. I haven't heard anything back from Bob just yet.
Well, I wanted to carry on my thoughts on the Ragnarok, actually.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So, I didn't even know the definition. So I'm going off the definition I was given, that it was the Norse apocalypse, and that today was something like that.
Yeah.
Now, I can imagine the Nordics come up with a pretty wicked-sounding apocalypse. But what I've discovered in my own thoughts and journeys of the Akashic is that we're not given a true view of what a lot of these, these cultures were of the past. We have a lot of information, but at the same time, the information is... Oh, yeah.
We have Bob.
Excellent.
Perfect. Okay, Julien was going on his perspective of this. Say that word one more time for me.
Ragnarok.
Ragnarok, thank you.
So I've found that a lot of cultures of the past have made, or have come to their own understanding of a point in time that we're referencing as being right now, or like the 2012, December 21st thing. And, the apocalypse, what are we really talking about there? We're really talking about sort of like a grand shift. It doesn't have to be seen as negative or positive. It's simply a shift. Now, for anyone that doesn't understand how a shift is possible, it would more likely be easily understood as something not good. Like not a good thing if things were to change so much, because, the basics of the reality that we've come to accept, nobody really wants that to be flipped over like a coin. But that's what I'm getting from all angles, is that it is going to be nearly like a flip over like a coin. My sense is that within the timelines that I'm journeying, I will see people like David Blaine and, Copperfield or whatever begin to do real magic. This magic will basically mess with people to the degree that they're going to start to wonder how it's possible, and then wonder if they can do it themselves. Now, I'm not calling out that David Blaine or whatever, those magicians that we already know are going to be the ones. It's probably going to be new people. Probably going to be people who are just going to basically show off what they can do and begin to show people how to do it. And Michael Monk is one of those. And, I wonder what other experiences are going to come to the fore that will also help people realize that there's an illusion or a perception that we don't have of a greater understanding of what's really going on. Now, you and I both know many people are like, they just don't care. They don't care, a whip about knowing any more than they already know, right? Like, everything's fine the way it is. I'm going to sit down and watch TV, right? And we're all wondering, how will a reality with those people transition? That's actually one of the bigger questions, because you and I can imagine what it's like for us to transition in a direction where we live as more holistic communities and we're closer together. What about everybody's on their couches, and what about all those people who aren't connected to the rest of the world, like in the middle of the Amazon or something? How are those people affected? Well, the biggest picture that I have, and this includes the subject of people believing in an apocalypse and whatnot, is that everyone gets precisely what they are going to experience, and that although we live in a collective reality we call, planet Earth, there's many dimensions to planet Earth, which means there's many different ways for you to interact with Gaia herself. And she supports a very large range of experiences. I mean, you've got people who are murderers, you've got people who own everybody's money through banks, and you've got really wonderful people who are humanitarians, bright as flames. And you look around and you say, how can all these people exist in the same world? Well, actually, what's actually occurring is this. It's not as homogenized as you might think. There is homogenization, as in we observe one another and we see that there is good and bad in the world or something like that. But in fact, it's all us. It's not actually anything else. And that every timeline, as in my timeline and your timeline, Sheri, and the timeline of every listener, is an individual experience. Now, we get confused because we look around and we say, hey, you standing there, do you see, that door that I see? I mean, can you see that light bulb? Yeah, I can see that light bulb. So people get confused. They assume that everything is as consistent as what we're able to point out to one another. But again, the story of there's a car crash and the police officer asks all the different, the 6 different witnesses what happened, they all say something different. Why does that occur? Well, because you have your own perception of everything. The only real way to have the same perception is to literally have empathy and be in the other person's head. The only way to actually share a perception is through empathy. Okay? So the only time that you're sharing an actual timeline with anybody is when you're sharing that perception and empathy. And empathy is that being in that other person's shoes. And until that occurs, we all live our own personal fragmented reality where there's hell and there's heaven occurring at the same time. As we practice more and more empathy, humanity itself will begin to coalesce an agreement that will allow society to take its understanding of everything that's going on and take it to the next level. You and I have an understanding, right? But we're still attached to the concept of collective. For instance, if you decided you wanted to fly like Superman tomorrow, in your personal space reality, we'll call it your imagination, because that's the only place you're truly isolated from everyone, is in your imagination. In your imagination, you can fly, okay? Now, you want that to be part of this collective reality. Everyone needs to believe that flying is potentially possible. Or you can trick them into believing that it's possible by basically citing all the different scientific reasons for the possibilities, for instance, Or you could just trick them by saying, I'm using strings. I'm on strings. Don't worry about it. You just can't see them. It's a movie special effect. But you could be really flying, okay?
Right, but you would be giving them a framework of concept. give them a framework
to
of concept.
actually understand, because what happens is that there is such thing as invisibility, okay, which is another way of saying that can't share or not sharing the same perception. Okay, we've already seen this through experiments in hypnosis, that someone could be made to be invisible to another person. But we also know that there is already tons and tons of things that are invisible to our five senses. We just agree to the things that most of us see with our five senses. But there is, and you ask anybody who's had a decent amount of psychedelics, if there's anything else out there worth looking at. And they say there's lots of things that we're not seeing, okay, that we're not experiencing. Yet, at some level, at some part of us, because we're multidimensional, we are existing in that place as well. Other parts of us are experiencing much more. And it's that mystery of what we're not experiencing and what we should experience as a collective. The fairy realm, okay, I'm just going to call it the fairy realm, the one with unicorns and pegasus and dragons and trolls and goblins and elves, they actually have a complete world just like ours, just as solid and stable and believable and magic and everything. That actually fully exists, fully, completely, and everything exists. Now, what I've been told is what happens when they walk over to a human city, okay? See, they see our world. They see our city. They can walk around us without us seeing them. It's literally like they're invisible to us, but they exist, okay? If they really want to mess with us and start, if they want to trip us in the middle of the sidewalk, they can do that. But in order to do that, their reality needs to be collectively understood with ours. Now, one of the reasons why they don't go around messing with us and pulling our hair and treating us like crap because they can, just because they're invisible, is they don't really give a crap about our human-made world. But most of them don't. There's only a couple different species of gnomes and elves that are actually interested in our world and bother to observe and reflect and decide to create a collective experience with us. Okay, but most of them don't. Most of them don't give a whip. And there's lots of bridging sentience. For instance, the trees live in both worlds. They see both sides. Everything that does not have an independent sense of consciousness like us, so basically everything besides humans can see them. Our buildings can see them, our food can see them, our dogs that are pets and animals, they can see them. Okay? They have access to that. They don't have any reasons why not to accept them. Okay? But there was a fracture that occurred some time ago where, because they're abundant and because they live beyond your average human means, they can live without food, they can live off sunlight, they're able to do magical things. There was a point where there was a cutoff and said, no more magic. Somebody said that. And it basically moved forward. And the last ones that truly believed in magic were sort of like the Wiccan, that actually persisted in sort of being like, carrying over experiences between that fairy world and our world. So essentially what this divide, this fracture occurred was our belief forgot them. We forgot them fundamentally. Now in that world as well, they have full experience of ghosts. Ghosts are much more visible. As we know, we have ghosts here, but we don't really have them here. We're only able to experience them very, very subtly. And so ghosts are a bridge because they can access both sides. Not that we know how to operate with ghosts, but the point is there's a whole reality that is outside the senses that we choose. And I foreshadow that and foresee that is going to return, that whole other dimensional reality is going to return to to the perceptions of people here. And the more that people accept them here, the more that doorway will open up. And there are places on the planet, and I've said this before, so I don't remember where I've said this, but I've said it before, that there are portals on the planet where that world is very open, especially in Ireland and a couple areas in Asia. And these are not very densely populated human areas. And there is going to be some bridging going on where it's quite possible for a human-looking elf to walk down the street because we believe they're human. Only when we take it step by step, moment by moment, we realize that they're not wearing prosthetic ears and that their eyes are at an angle that are not natural, and that they do have a color skin that you've never seen before that has a green hue to it, sort of like a reflection. Then you start to say, wow, you got a hell of a makeup system on you, but, you know, are you real? And then you hear them talk, and you say, wow, you learned a very peculiar dialect of Klingon there, but, you know, what else can you do to prove to me that you're not just a human in disguise? And then they'll do things like jump up on a second story roof. Like, wow, that's kind of skillful. Now I'm starting to believe you might actually be an elf that jumps and lives in the trees. But they don't really care about coming here. They don't. They're interested, and they know that the shift is occurring, that more and more of us are beginning to accept that their reality is fundamentally part of Gaia's reality as well. But that dimension hasn't merged yet. It'll merge when we accept it that is possible. I'm excited for it personally. But there is...
Well, the fact that we're having the conversation about it changes the potential.
Yes, it does. It's expanding the doorways as I'm talking about it, right, and acknowledging it. Do you remember in Peter Pan, one of the things that was used, that Tinkerbell said, was if you say, I don't believe in fairies, somewhere a fairy falls down dead, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Well, that equivalent actually occurs in that one more fairy has decided not to interact with our side of the veil, of this dimensional wall. So it'll leave. But every person who says, I believe in fairies, will basically offer one more fairy's hopes to join and return to a visible state that we can experience. Okay? Most of the fairies have like this entire telepathic network. Similar to how the trees have a telepathic network to all the trees. A lot like an avatar, actually. They all speak through Gaia, and they can talk to each other on the other side of the planet. The fairies have that sort of network as well. At least that's what I'm told. And so all fairies generally know what all the other ones are. They have their own, like, telepathic internet or something. They keep tabs on each other and stuff because they network very seriously. They do a lot of collaboration. They don't just operate on instinct. They operate on collective agreements of, you know, what to do and what they want to do, right? And they don't get in each other's way. They work very harmoniously, even if they don't see each other. Now, it's as if they don't want that to be disrupted simply by us being introduced into the mix of their lives. So they don't really care. They'd rather not mess around with us. The only kinds of people that they are interested in meeting are those that are open to believing and respecting them. So you can also believe in them and not respect them. So respect is also the other part of it. Now, when I sort of ping the Pleiadians on why, you know, and all this about the fairy realm and all that, they said, oh, yeah, they have total access to that realm as well. And they know that, for the most part, they've been disappointed. But in the sense that disappointment is not the human kind of disappointment. It's a kind of disappointment that is along the lines of, I can't wait for my baby brother to grow up, but it's going to happen eventually, so I just need to be patient. So that's kind of their approach. And, it's weird to be talking about this stuff, but at the same time, I'm faced with it often. Anyway.
Right, and there's a really great reference too in that same movie, Peter Pan, with Robin Williams, as he sits down with the Lost Boys. And this was something that came to me kind of early on when I was doing my own kind of starting to adventure into expanded consciousness. I would get this little ping of that same movie and the little boy going, "You're doing it, Peter, you're doing it." When Peter sits down at the table with the Lost Boys and they've got all these plates and bowls out there and they're all sitting around and they're all kind of feeding their face with air, it looks like from his perspective at first. And then they all just kind of look at him like, well, you have to see it, you have to believe it, you have to know that it's there. And so he takes a moment to close his eyes and soak in that knowing that there's an abundance of food there. And when he opens his eyes, there's this plethora buffet of beautiful rainbow-colored food.
Yes, that's
exactly.
That's very much. That's actually a wonderful example. And actually, the movie is Hook for anybody that didn't quite get the reference.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things similar to that. Like, for instance, I was told how to actually access the fairy realm if you wanted to. It's pretty much just a mantra that connects you to the belief structure. Like, you could say, I believe in fairies, and you just keep spinning. Like, you just twirl yourself around, twirl yourself around and around and around. If you're in the woods and you say that out loud, well, then they're extremely likely to reveal themselves to you and to bridge that dimensional divide, right? Because they can also escape your sight if they choose to, but they can only do that to a degree. If you have full access, then they can't even disappear from your sight. What they have to do is they have to change their vibration to even like a non-fairy frequency. But as you know, through the imagination state, you access multiple other states. It's not just, the imagination world and this world. Imagination accesses like many, many, many dimensions. Okay, so, you can look outside and with your imagination you can perceive like a spaceship there. And you can blink again and decide to perceive that there's a second sun. And through another, blink of your eye, you can imagine that you're seeing, people flying, right? Because you have your imagination access. So basically you have access to all those dimensions of potential timeline realities. And you're like, well, yeah, you see, imagination means there's nothing concrete out there. It means there actually isn't anything. There's nothing to perceive, right? Well, you're forgetting that the only thing we really care about generally is a shared experience. That's what planet Earth is about. It's the imagination of the shared experience. So what we're struggling with here is trying to see the same things. Like, do you see that ship? No, I don't see that ship. Like, does anybody else see that ship? We're trying to bridge that collective reality that is beyond what we've previously agreed to. Okay? You can see everything, but what happens is you give yourself a chance to doubt that it exists, and therefore you're canceling out your ability to see as quickly as you're able to see it. Okay? So some people, when they don't even know that there's something they're not supposed to see, they get sort of like a trick of the mind, Like when I was in Shasta and I was seeing fairies, I was like, wow, I'm like tripping. I'm not even taking anything. But then I was like, no, that's real. That fairy has come close to you and is mooning you. I was like, that's so messed up. Like, why would a fairy do that? That can't be true. I've got the most bonkers imagination ever. No, he doesn't like you, so he wants you to go away. Like, what did I do to him? And it's like, he's like, no, they don't know you, and so they just treat you like the other humans that, litter and disrespect the plants in the area and stuff. So he just thinks you're just like another human. You want to get along, you got to build that empathy. You need to know where each other is coming from, and because we don't know basically at all what it's like to be a fairy or a mermaid or a unicorn or anything like that, because we don't really know, we're essentially not invited to join them, because if we, they don't want to hang out with anybody who doesn't have empathy. Same thing with the Pleiadians. They don't want to hang out with anybody who doesn't have empathy, which means that you really don't have a collective experience unless you have empathy. They see how we treat animals. They know we have very little empathy over and over again, and they focus on how we have little empathy for a lot of the animals, and for and for the environment that we take away from the animals. And so they're like, yeah, if you can't even get along with simple consciousnesses, then we're not going to have you coming in harvesting our consciousnesses, because they know that occurs too. They see people oppressing each other, and they don't like that either. They're like, screw that. I don't want to hang around anybody who goes around oppressing one another. So they fragmented and they left. And they're right there on the precipice of coming back as soon as we sort of get it together. And I half expect large numbers of people will begin to see them on their own, and just they won't even bother trying to explain to everyone else what they're going through. They'll just be like, you know what, we're going to be your friends and we're going to hang out with you, even if we're not even telling anybody else about it, because we don't want to jeopardize this wonderful little relationship. Yes.
We're going to our last 20 minutes. We just have a couple callers. We want to bring those out.
Excellent. I'm going to bring out. It's weird. It's a number that only has one.
Yep, I think that's a Skype number. 111-111-1111.
Well, that person's active, so try saying hello.
Yeah, hello everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Dr. Hawkins. I'm from Houston, Texas.
Oh, hey.
Hey. Well, I want to remind you of something in physics. Actually two somethings that the mainstream physicists really didn't want to talk about, and they damn sure didn't want to inform the public about. The first thing,
what's that?
Something called the many worlds theory.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the many worlds theory, but basically what they're talking about are dimensions within dimensions within dimensions. And, of course, string theory was developed to sort of expound on that a little bit. But a wise man once said that theories are formed from experience and never mysterious forces. So the thing that we have to ask ourselves then is, why the hell did the physicists come up with the many worlds theory or superstring theory with its up to 16 dimensions, shattering Einstein's relativity? How did they come up with this? I mean, did they just dream it up? Or did someone actually experience certain things interdimensionally? And
that's a good question.
You see what I mean? And this is something physicists don't want to talk about, and here's why, which leads me to my second point. In quantum mechanics, you might want to hold on to your hats. There is something known as da-da-da-da-da-da. I mean, and you could take this as literally as it sounds. Ghost forms. And this is established scientific fact. It's been established for decades. They just never told the sheep. But here's what a ghost form is. Just say, for example, you're in a room by yourself, an empty room, nothing in the room but you. And then suddenly, let's say an apple appears about 3 inches from your face. You see it, it's there, and then it just vanishes. That, my friend, is a ghost form. It can actually be a live entity, or it could be something that's completely inanimate. But this has been proven in science for several decades, and they never released the information to the general public. So if you Google ghost forms, you're going to pull up a whole bunch of stuff on the paranormal, ghost and this and that, but they won't actually tell you what ghost forms is. You have to Google quantum mechanics /ghost forms, and then you'll get into the real science. But this is something that's already been confirmed. So what am I saying to you? It's simple. Psychology, for example, and you notice I'm giving you a lot of references. Psychology acknowledges the fact that there are 7 levels of mind, Western psychology. Okay? But they also acknowledge the fact that as of 1953, they only teach 5 of the 7 levels of mind.
Yep.
The 2 levels that are beyond the subconscious mind are called the superconscious. They stopped teaching that information for a reason, because first and foremost, the military had to weaponize certain psychotronic systems and other systems beyond psychotronics to catch up with the Soviet engineers and physicists who weaponized these systems that they were using to control the weather and produce what was called the woodpecker signal and things of this nature to entrain whole regions of the population's mind using dual binaural beats and things of this nature. So I know that the magnitude of this is going to fly over a lot of people's head like an umbrella, but they better get the information while they can. So again, the meat and potatoes of it, my people, is simple. Your subconscious mind does not operate like your conscious mind. Just say, for example, we've all played connect the dots in school. Yeah. Think about it like this. Your conscious mind connects dot to dot to dot to dot to dot, 1 dot at a time. It's rational, logical, whatever. Okay? Your subconscious mind doesn't think like that. It doesn't have to think. It's beyond thinking. What it does is it illuminates all of the dots at the same damn time. See? Now, the 2 superconscious levels that are beyond the subconscious that they stopped teaching about, these levels of mind actually supply the subconscious mind with its energy to form imagery in the first place and to store its imagery. That's how it works. So whenever you think of something, the superconscious levels of your mind, as they're called, some call them Christ consciousness or Buddha consciousness, cosmic consciousness, whatever you want to call it, what happens is that level of your mind literally grabs the atmosphere, it grabs the molecules and the atoms in your environment and starts to form them into the image of whatever it is that you're thinking. We call those thought forms in psychology and in metaphysics. They are real, and the physicists know this, and they've been bought and paid for the most part, and the people aren't. Let me say it like this: the people need to become more inquisitive if they want to escape the matrix, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah, that actually goes hand in hand with the experience that I had. I found a document that trained on how to manifest objects out of thin air, and I actually created a copy of a penny in my hand with the same date. I actually manifested that, and that, of course, was maybe almost a year ago now, and it involved a lot of discipline and an energy focus that I developed while I was working with Michael Monk in his course. But that happened. I haven't been able to do it again because I seem to be blocking myself out from doing that because I'm literally like afraid of the consequences. But more and more, I want to do it again and similar experiences because that's it. It lobotomized my approach to life, as if I almost didn't even believe it was possible, but it actually happened more easily than I anticipated. It took me about an hour, but I knew that if I had greater discipline and focusing, I could probably do it in 15 minutes. That happened, and I know I don't have any evidence to prove, especially since the second penny, when you look at it under a microscope, it doesn't look exactly the same. It's not an exact copy, so I got really upset about that. It had the same date. It had very similar blemishes and whatnot, but in fact, it ended up being a unique penny, which, yeah.
Well, you see, the power of the mind is immense, y'all. You see, in order to keep us in the illusion, we have to be made to forget about our true nature as beings of light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because Matrix itself is constructed of stagnated light. That is it. Okay, but the thing that we got to understand is that it is of our mental energy. We can easily take our energy back. But the people are, when you hear stuff like, well, most people use 3% of their mind's power. When a person hears that, that's unconsciously telling them, keep your head in the sand, you little sheep, and, you don't worry about the deeper things in life. You just, there's nothing to see over here. You just keep going about your merry way. And people don't even want to try.
Mm-hmm. That's just it. I think, one of the things that I feared about this is that I actually believe I can teach people how to do this. I'm just not ready to teach people how to do what I did. And I figure there's a lot of people that would actually be able to do it better and faster than I did it. I mean, the actual instruction is maybe like 2 hours of instruction, and we'll see. We'll see if there comes a point at which I'm one of those people that demonstrates magic or not. I still have my own mental block. I know it consciously that I do, and because of that, I know what to address. But, that 5% of using our brain, I know what you're talking about, and I know how people are just told that, and, but without any solution given at the same time. They're just saying, you're limited, and that's just, they leave it as that's too bad for you.
Yeah. See, but the good news, though, is that there's no way that we could separate our minds from the environment. And once people realize that, they realize, holy crap, the environment is my mind. You've been lying. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, we're going to put your ass in jail, Mm-hmm. And, of course, the wolves wouldn't want that, so, they just tell people, oh, listen, just stick with this little religious dogma over here, objectify your women. That way we can rape them as corporations and exploit them and all this kind of stuff. And, be a good little bootlicker, and here's my boot.
Yeah, I hear you on all that. And I want to thank you again for calling in. But we have another caller that I was hoping to get to since we only have 12 minutes left. Thank you. What was your name again?
Thank you. This is Dr. Hawkins.
Okay. Thank you. And, do call it again. I love what you bring to the conversation.
Yeah, that was
absolutely
awesome.
Okay. Well, I'm opening up the line to area code 303.
Oh, I have to call every single time there's a blog talk. I think we should get the good Dr. Hawkins on as a regular on the show. I think he needs his own show because we can learn a hell of a lot from him. I want to tell you that it's not only it's not only that we want to interact with the fairies, but the fairies want to interact with us. And a few years ago, I put something out like a gift because someone told me that they were feeding the fairies, like something. I don't remember it was foamy milk or what, but I put something out. It might have been beer, I'm not sure. But I put it in a little flat dish, and the next day I kind of had forgotten about it, and I was walking back to my house. I live up in the mountains, and there's lots of, animals and trees and amazing things up here. And I looked down at the empty little cup, and there was a gift. It's like a little. I'm holding it in my hand now. It's a little plastic kitty with a wreath on its head, and it's like a little Christmas decoration. And it just blows my mind. I had to go when you were talking, I thought, I have to call because I have to tell them about this gift, and I ran and got it off my altar so I'm holding it right now. But they give to us, too. You know, they want to give to us, too. They want to, if we give them something, they want to give it back. Is that very cool?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they work on an exchange system, right? That's not money, of course, but they definitely show their gratitude as quickly as they can. They work in an extremely high gratitude system,
right?
Because I don't want to say they have less energy than we do, but their energy mass is less than ours is. And so energy, when it comes to the physical dimension, is a slightly more scarce thing for them. So they're extremely grateful from moment to moment, especially for nurturing, sustainable energy forms. If you want to do it again, you know, they're actually quite into organic honey. And they're very into mashed up fruits. Like if you take an apple or a cherry, whatever, they like that quite a bit. If there's a lot of fiber to it, they may not actually physically absorb it. They might only absorb sort of like the life of it. Fruits and whatnot have sort of like a life that's within it before it decides to depart and become a rotten fruit. They will basically, you'll note that the fruit goes rotten very quickly after they've drained the essence of that. I think there's actually quite a few people videotaping evidence of this. You can find them on YouTubes and things. But it's a regular phenomenon. They exist, and of course, if you have empathy for them, they do see good cause to have empathy for you. I'm with Crystal here. This is one of my roommates. She has had an experience of seeing the light ball versions of fairies, which is one way to interpret what they look like, since our human eyes sometimes don't translate the patterns of what they look like very well. If you were to take a snapshot with a camera, you're more likely to see their form. But to us, it's a little bit more like a flicker show, so we don't actually fully see their form that easily. That's not true relative to how it was for me in Mount Shasta. I saw them, and they were luminous, kind of like if they're made out of like fluorescent tubes or something like that, right? Or made out of plastic that was lit from the inside or something. And their wings, they were like a hummingbird. So I really couldn't catch exactly the dimensions of the shapes of that. But I was, highly impressed. I was trying to see if anybody else could see them, but I had actually just come off of a very, very energetic, high experience coming off an Atlantean crystal bed set up by Brian Porter, and I was, total third eye blown open like a cannonball, and I could see everyone's auras like a flame, like they were on fire, and their aura would actually expand out like up to 10 feet above them. I don't see that anymore like that. At that time, it was amazing. It was just a stunning world that I had entered into at that point, which led to my whole spiritual massive development last year that, of course, I've been sharing about since the summer solstice. Anyhow.
Okay, well, I wanted to say another thing, too.
Thank you for sharing.
I was going to say another thing. I was laying under the pine tree one day, and I was looking up through the branches, and there was a purple light, a very intense purple light on one of the branches, and I just laid there forever and just watched it and kept thinking, this is definitely, you don't see purple very often in the forest. You see green, or you see, shades of that, but purple on a branch was just amazing to me. So I just laid there and just, let it shine, and it was just very amazing. Of course, I'll never forget it. Like I didn't, everything that's happening now is amazing because I talk to the trees. I can get rid of the chemtrails. We're learning a lot of things and using our abilities. And I'll get off the phone and let you get somebody else. And thank you.
Well, thank you. What was your name again?
My name is Vernell. I live in Colorado.
Oh, thank you, Vernell.
In the mountains. Okay, bye, hon.
Awesome. Well, we are down to the last 6 minutes, so I do want to give a chance to everyone to maybe say their last thoughts or something on the panel. Sheri, Bob?
Yeah. Well, Go ahead, Bob.
I knew you were going to say that. I just want to, to add, confirmation to all of what is being talked about, because there is that layered reality, and you can experience it. You can tune into it, and it's there. The whole magical world is there, and as these two worlds start to join together, you're going to find that your reality becomes a lot more dreamlike and a lot more interactive. And you can start doing it now is life, and it's all reflective of you. So imagine magic. It's like a movie, The Guardian begins, where all the Santa's up there, and he's looking at all the different weights in the world of children who believe. Be one of those believers. Believe. Understand that you have the potential to experience a lot more of reality than you've been taught. And the more people that start to expand the consciousness, the easier it becomes for others to experience that same expansion, that same merging. It heightens the potential, and it quickens, it hastens that merging of those two worlds. So start dreaming. Remember what it's like to be a kid.
Yeah, I think, and the last thing you said there about being like a child, the child doesn't have as much programming as the adult does. Has not accepted as much of the limitations as the adults have come to be taught. So the children have a lot to teach us about leaving, some programs behind, some belief structures behind, because they're already relatively free of a lot of it. I'm raising my own children and really not wanting to impose any sort of belief. I want them to be in discovery mode. And if they ask me questions, I'll tell them straight out what I think, even if it's very strange. Like when my daughter asked me about fairies, I'm like, oh yeah, they exist, and if you want to go fairy hunting, let's do it. Because I believe in that. I've seen it, I've experienced it, and I know other people have too. And there's been lots of data on how to explore that. And the child knows. The child is likely to see a fairy before an adult does. That's what pretty sure about that. We haven't gone fairy hunting yet, but I know it's on the list of things I want to do.
Fairy fishing sounds like a whole bunch of fun, actually.
Yeah.
You can do it in all kinds of ways to start adventuring into that imagination part. And something that I do, if it's a new concept for me, then I start playing more fun what-if games. What if there was a unicorn right out there in my front lawn? Then I start to give my senses a concept. Okay, so what would it look like? What would it feel like? How would I react? How would I feel? And what we do is we actually give our physical, 3D senses with our minds and our imagination a better concept for how that experience might be for it to manifest. And it actually builds the framework up to it so that we can work up until that actually happens. I actually have a little bit of data on unicorns. I actually have a bit of data on unicorns. I know we're down to our last minute. Unicorns actually look like horses. But when you have expanded your sight, you can see the energy pillar off of their forehead. And you'll note that they're extremely intuitive, and they're basically very, very, very intelligent horses. They just hide that aspect of themselves. They don't actually allow anyone to ride them except for people from the fairy world, I'm getting. But in general, if you are able to speak with a horse, chances are that it might have some genetic mixing with a unicorn horse. Amazing.
Because
Perfect.
some horses have more, genetics of the psychicness. So,
awesome.
Anyway.
Well, that was the last little bit of our show. Thank you guys so much for calling in. I know we had a little bit of, Skypiness going on there, so thanks for hanging in. Thanks, Bob.
Yes, thank you, Sheri, for holding it down, and thank you to everybody who called in, everyone in the chat room. We'll be back next week. I know we've lost most of the audience already, but they'll hear this on the archive. So, good night, everyone.
Good night,
Good night, everybody.